Welcome, and this is my last two lecture, and in this lecture we will discuss about the iron making and steel making in India. And I'll talk about first the evolution of the global vis-a-vis Indian steel scenario, and then Indians potential in the steel. What is the India's potential into the steel making industry, and also what are the problems in India steel industry, and steel education and research in India. So, first start with the evolution of the global vis-a-vis Indian steel and steel making sector. And if you can see, this is the data taken from the World Steel Report 2019. You can see the crude steel production from 1960 to 2018 it is given. And as you can see that around 1960 it was around 200 million ton per annum the world steel production, and then it gradually increased to around this much, that is around 700 million ton by around 1975 like that, or 1980. And after that there is a period, that is the 70 to 90. During this period you can find 70 to 90, right up to 70 you can see. And then 70 to 90, this period there is a stagnation in the growth of world steel production, okay, and then there is a rapid rise in the steel production. So initially there is a 60 to around 75, 1970 like that, this region there was a steady increase in the growth rate of the steel, and basically here the steel demand was mostly by the developing countries. And then there was a stagnation into the growth, and that is mainly due to some economic recession during that period all over the world. And then you can see there is a steep rise, and this production, most of this production was contributed by China, and consumption also China increased significantly, and the China also consumed a lot of steel out of which, okay. So that is the thing. So production increased gradually up to 70s, and then there was a stagnation period from 70 to 90, and after that growth is exponential, okay. And if I say Indian steel making, the early steel making in India started in Bengal Iron and Steel Company in Borakar in 1875, long back, and then Tata Iron and Steel Company came around 1907. So in early 80s, the spurt in the domestic demand, because some of the infrastructure development was coming in that time, and economic boom in the Southeast Asia, so development of the new steel making companies and expansion of the existing company, that is the greenfield brownfield project, both were coming there at that time in early 90s. By that time there is the Steel Authority of India. After 1907 there is TISCO came, and then in the post-independence period, that is the shale plants came, lot of shale plants came around, that is 5 shale plants. There is a Bokaro, Bhilai, Raurkela. So those Durgapur, those steel plant came around 1960 to 70s during that period. And in 1980s, and there was that is the expansion, there is the brownfield project of this shale company, there is the Steel Authority of India. These units were expanded, and some new units also come during that period, like Vizag Steel came into picture. That is called the Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, and beside the Salem Steel Plant and the Bhadravati Steel, some special steel plant also appeared during that period. So both the brownfield and greenfield and private parties were not much. Besides the steel, not much private parties were there during that time. Mostly that is the shale expanded and also introduced new plants during that period. And then because of this boom, economic boom in Southeast Asia, and the spurt in the domestic demand increased because of some new infrastructure was coming, bridge, like this railway and all these things. However, soon the situation worsened and the demand fall, and during that, after we make all this expansion and all these things, then there is a demand fall throughout the world. There was a recession. As a result, the demand fall. And if you can see, that is the crude steel production. If you can see today, the majority of the crude steel is produced by the China. More than 50% is produced by China, and then now 5.9%, that is 106 million ton per annum steel is today is produced by India. There is the second largest producer of steel, followed by Japan. Japan also produces around 104 million tons per annum. And then other Asia 7.3%, others 5.9%, European Union 9.3%, other Union. So like that. So this is total production today is 1,808 million tons, out of which China produces around more than 50%, around more than 900 million tons is produced by China itself. And consumption wise, if you see, because the China produced during this exponential growth, this is basically the China's contribution was the maximum. And also you can see the consumption of steel in China also increased significantly because of large domestic market of China, because it produced a lot of steel, and then maximum that the steel was gone into the domestic market mostly. They can see the consumption of the is around 48.8% of the total steel consumption of the world. China consumed around 48.8%, so huge. So their production they basically consumed. Okay, and then India also not bad, 5.6, and USA and India are more very close, and then the total steel consumption in India is around today maybe very close to 100 million tons per annum. And Japan is around 3.8, and then other Asian countries is like that. Major you can find the China. Okay, so in 1990, with liberalization of Indian economy, private parties were encouraged into steels. That is, the Indian government deregularized. That is the lot of things. That is, initially the private parties were discouraged into the steel because of licensing, and then number of organizations from where they have to go for licensing, and a lot of corruption erupted during that time. As a result, the private parties were not encouraged. But after liberalization, government deregularized a lot of things. So as a result, decontrolled a lot of things. As a result, so the private parties found it a very congeable, that is the very good atmosphere to participate into the steel making. That is the signal. Then there is the public investment in the infrastructure development, that also gives a lot of boost for the steel demand in India. As a result, you would increase the steel demand during 2000 to 2005. In 2018, India became the second largest producer of steel with 106 million ton. Steel consumption wise, India is also growing fast. Okay, so that is basically the production. There is a production wise, India is the second largest producer today, and consumption wise also it is increasing. But India also has a huge domestic market, but we are crippled by the fact that rural people don't have much of purchasing power. So we are not being able to supply the steel into the rural area. So government is taking some steps such that the steel, our domestic market, we can consume a lot of steel using our domestic market. Okay. So some of the major steel producers in India, if you see, that is the Jindal Steel and Power Limited, JSPL, and it has two plants. One is the Raigad, Chhattisgarh, another is the Angul in Odisha. And their capacity is in the Raigad, Chhattisgarh around 3.6 million ton per annum, where 6 million ton in the Angul, Odisha. They have the captive power plant, because they also produce the power, captive power plant, because they have some DRI units I am just talking about, and from the DRI units they produce the captive power. Captive power plant is there to utilize the off gas from the DRI unit, and they have major product like rail and the plate mills, etc. And in Angul, Odisha is very important, because I will say they have recently installed a coal based matrix process to produce 1.8 million ton of DRI. Okay, matrix is usually gas based, but there is the matrix has retrofitted the syngas. There is the coal based syngas into their matrix unit. Okay, so this is there, and besides, Raigad also has rotary kiln based, coal based DRI plant also in the Raigad, Chhattisgarh. Okay, and that is also around 2 million ton capacity. And then Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited, Jamshedpur. They have TISCO has presence in the Jamshedpur. They have in Jamshedpur, that is in Jharkhand. They have also new plant in Kalinganagar. Jamshedpur today producing around 10 million ton and Kalinganagar is around 3 million ton. They have also acquired the Bhushan Steel and it has unit at Maharashtra, UP and Odisha that also produce around 5.6 million ton. Total production is quite high now in India, that is around 18 million tons. And they produce flat products, basically the auto grade steel, structural steel, long products, that is there. Then we have the Steel Authority of India, that is the SAIL. SAIL has unit at Durgapur, Bokaro, Bhilai, ISCO and then Raurkella. And they have some special steel plant, that is the alloy steel plant Durgapur, then special steel plant in Salem, Visvesvaraya steel plant in Karnataka. They have these plants because they have some ferroalloy plant and the refractory plants also. This is all about the SAIL and it is operated by Government of India. Total production around 16 million ton per annum, product rail, structural, flat, long product, special steels. And then come the JSW Steel, Jindal Steel, and this is also Jindal Steel and Power Limited. This is JSW Steel. This is also operated by JSW, and they have unit in Bellary, Karnataka, then Dalvi in Maharashtra, and the Salem in Tamil Nadu. They have 3 major plants are there. They produce around 18 million tons of steel per annum, and there is a leading steel producer in India today. And they are also leading exporter of steel in 100 countries and they export around 3 million tons per annum. Okay. And they have a very unique facility called the Konark Steel Melting Facility. This is basically a confluence of your BOF and the electric arc furnace, such that they can utilize any charge mix into the Konark furnace. Okay. And then the Vizag steel plant, as I said, it came around 70 to 80s, and then Visakhapatnam steel plant, this is called Rashtu Ispat Nigam Limited, and it has capacity around 7.3 million ton per annum, largest producer of bars and rods. Okay, so these are basically the major steel producer in India, but secondary steel sectors are there based on electric arc furnace and small electric arc furnace and the electric induction furnace. There is a lot of steel production in India comes from there, produces about 30% of the annual steel production in India. Out of 100, 30 million ton is produced by secondary steel sector. So in the secondary steel sector, major raw material is basically the iron ore scrap or sometimes DRI. Basically they based on the cold charge and then produced locally. They produce the steel and produce different types of product. And one of the large number of such unit produce easily sellable TMT bars, that you know a lot of advertisement is there. So TMT bar they produce, and then this secondary steel, around 30% steel is produced by electric arc furnace and the induction furnace. Okay. So this is the scenario of the steel production in India. There is a total scenario. And India's potential in the steel. At present, India's steel, that is the major drawback, that is the India's per capita steel consumption is a meager 70 kg compared to a world average of 225. In South Korea, this value, as I said in my beginning of the slide, that is in introduction slide, that it is around 1000 kg per person in South Korea. In China, with a lot of population, it has also per capita consumption around 600 kg of steel per person. And world average is 225 kg and India is 70 kg. That still it has increased today. It was much low, around 40 kg it was there, now today it is 70 kg. So we are totally basically we have a huge potential, but we have not able to reach that level. Okay. So this low average steel consumption in India is due to rural population. Around 70% of the total population stays into the rural area, and their per capita consumption is around 2 kg steel. So that is the major drawback. So they don't have the purchasing power. That's why we have to make this rural area more solvent, such that their purchasing power is more and they can buy the steel. And also some infrastructure development can take place there. To enhance the rural steel consumption, government has taken some rural-oriented policies. This has increased the steel demand in rural India, but we have yet to go a long road ahead, such that much more our consumption in the rural area increases, then this will go up. So, large availability of the good quality iron ore reserve, that is our one of the very large potential, is that we have a good quality. Still now we have a lot of reserve for iron ore, good quality hematite ore. Even for next 50 years we can run very easily if we don't export any good quality iron ore. That is the thing. Potentiality in the global market also. So, a study in the business school in USA showed that India is the most competitive place for outsourcing metal based manufacturing product. So, we can invite a lot of foreign direct investments also here and produce the metal and then manufacture products and then supply to the others. So, potentiality in the global market also exists. We have a huge domestic market. Only thing is that we have to utilize that. And already India is the second largest producer of steel. So, we have a much more, there is a large scope to enhance the steel production much above the present level. So, government has targeted the 300 million ton by 2025. So, soon we should reach to 200 million ton target, then 300, and then we have scope to go to 1000 million tons also. If China can produce it, we can also produce at least 500 million tons. Okay. Challenges are there. Our major bottleneck is the shortage of the coking coal. That is, most of our blast furnace is BF, that is the blast furnace BF best, and blast furnace depends on the coking coal, and we have a very limited deposit of the coking coal, and that too with a very high ash content. So, we are dependent on the import of the coking coal, and the process become very costly, and as I said, that is around 50% of the hot metal cost is contributed by the coke, there is a coke only. So, this is our bottleneck. That is, if we want to increase the capacity, we have to think for some other routes of iron making such that we can use the non-coking coal. That is why our DRI and the smelting reduction process will be has a very bright future in India. Okay, that is the shortage of coking coal reserve. That is one of the bottleneck. So, we cannot run the BF process. That is the very well tested process, and we cannot increase the capacity to a great extent unless we think about some alternative routes or some washing. That is, we have basically a lot of coking coal with a high ash. So, if you can wash those coking coal and make the ash content to 8 to 10%. Infrastructure, we have developed our infrastructure, but yet to go a long road to develop much more efficient infrastructure such that is the transport become much more effective. Ancillaries like MSME has to develop, because we have to develop an ecosystem with the integrated steel plant with the MSME. So, both with the give and take policy, that is the MSME also will take the steel plates, they will produce the product, sell in the market, and they also supply lot of ancillary product to the steel industry. So, MSME has to be developed. Significantly, government is also taking a lot of steps to revive the MSME in India such that the ancillaries around the major steel plant grows. That is very much required for foreign direct investment also. If some company comes, then this type of ancillaries should be there. They can support the integrated steel plant, both by supplying some parts as well as taking the pellets, taking the product from the integrated steel plant and producing some value-added product and sell. Another bottleneck is the inefficient management. We have a huge expenditure on the social overhead and very poor management, poor industrial relationship, especially in the public sector. So, this management has to be efficient, although people has captured this point and trying to develop on it and has developed significantly, but still we have a long road to go. Low labor productivity. We have lot of cheap labors, that is undoubtedly no question about that. We have a cheap labors, plenty of labors, but the labor productivity if we see India is not in a very good position. If you just compare the labor productivity in advanced countries is about 600 to 700 tons per man per year, whereas in India it is only 90 to 100 tons per man per year. So our labor productivity is less. So this labor productivity has to increase. Energy efficient technology. Our technology has to be the cutting edge technology where it should be very energy efficient. If it consumes a lot of energy, obviously the product will be costly and we cannot compete into the global market. And also the energy intensive process is not sustainable also, because it produces a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. There is a CO2 emission is high, the environmental not friendly. So that's why we have to have our indigenous energy efficient technology. Global competitiveness in steel price. So government is protecting us by imposing some taxes on the imports such that our homegrown steel industry grow. So this is not possible in the global market. So we cannot sustain this process for a long time. So as a result, we have to be globally competitive. Our steel price has to come down. So for doing that, we have to have energy efficient technology, and we have to be efficient in all respect. So that is there. There is the global competitiveness in the steel price that we have to come up. And also, sometimes there is the MSME also get affected when you impose some taxes on the imports, because they can get the cheap steel from abroad, from outside, but because of tax that is not possible. And that is done only to safeguard our integrated steel plant, but that is not the way we can sustain. We can sustain a very good ecosystem with MSME. So MSME has to be allowed because they have to grow. So their product will be sold, and they also, whenever required, they should be allowed to import the products from abroad also, and export, import, both should go on, and it should be competitive globally. And for that, only thing is that we have to be much more efficient. Both process efficiency you have to increase. We have to increase the that is the labor productivity. We have to have a very efficient management, all these things, and infrastructure development. So these are the challenges in the that is the years to come that we have to take care. Now, problems of the coal scenario in India, it is very important. That's why I am telling again. That is the total proven coal reserve in the world around 1 trillion. Okay, out of which 50% of which is coking coal. So in the world I am talking about. And India's total coal reserve is 7.6% of the world reserve, and out of which coking coal is only 15% of that reserve. And that too, that meager amount of coking coal has a problem of high ash up to 30% and road end. Okay, that we have just talked about. Thus, coal is a big concern in India towards enhancing the steel production. With increase in steel production, coking coal demand always outstripped the supply. Besides, this limited availability, high ash and low rank has been the additional constraint. So, integrated steel producer had no option but to import high quality coal from Australia, amounting around 30 to 50% of the coal requirement. Total coal requirement 30 to 40% is taken from abroad, and this from indigenous coal they blend it before making it coke. Another limitation of larger ports of capable of handling so lakhs of tons of coal in the large cargo ship. So that is not there. We have to have this type of ports such that we don't depend on a particular country for the importing the coal. So we can import the coal from other place also. Like with development of such ports, imports from other countries like USA, Canada, Poland, low ash non-coking coal from South Africa, Indonesia can find increasing use in Indian steel industry. So we have to develop the ports also. Okay, because the steel production overnight you cannot convert it to DRI and the SR process. Okay, so you have to go through the BFBF route. So you will depend on the blast furnace steel production, and you will depend on the coke. So we have to import the coking coal. And then we have to see the other source of coking coal. We have to tap the other source of coking coal around the world other than Australia. And then for that we have to develop some ports also. What scenario in India? Currently Indian commercial, that is good. That is the what scenario India is encouraging. Current Indian commercial mining capacity is around 175 million ton per annum. Mining capacity also we have to increase if we want to increase our production. In 2005, 145 million ton was mined and out of 78 million tons was exported. This is not a very good trend. We should stop the export because rich ore should be used in our country itself. Iron mining capacity need to enhance in future and export of high grade ore need to stop. This is very important. It is already under the severe scrutiny of the government. So mining, after mining you some company that is they were just exporting the high grade ore abroad, and that should not be there. That is totally stopped, and it is already under the severe scrutiny of the government. And if you want to produce around 200 million ton, 180 million ton of steel in future, we have to mine around 330 millions of iron ore needed to be mined, and we have present capacity around 200 million ton per annum. So we have to increase the mining capacity also. So we have to develop in the area of the mining. So if we can do that, and then if we can restrict the export of any rich iron grade ore, whatever the reserve we have, we can safely continue for next 50 years. So this is basically some of the scenario, that is the iron ore scenario, coal scenario we have talked about, and the steel production and their use we have talked about. And in the next lecture I will discuss about the from here, that is the alternative iron makings in India, and how we can, and also the steel research and education in India. Thank you very much.